of Ascents.
Let's continue on in our sermon series, A Song of Ascents.
今日是提到詩篇131篇。
Today we will be meditating on Psalm 131.
我哋乜是 Victory over Pride。
And the sermon title is called Victory Over Pride.
咱廿幾年肉體中間嘅驕傲。
Let's overcome the pride that we have in our lives.
咱就嚟讀 Psalms 131。
Let's read Psalm 131 together.
All right,
May I request everybody to please stand up.
read together. My heart is not proud. Lord, my eyes are not haughty. I do not concern myself with great matters of things too wonderful for me, but I have calm and quieted myself. I'm like a weaned child with his mother. Like a weaned child, I am content. Israel, put your hope in the Lord, both now and forevermore. Thank you. You can take a seat.
Please be seated.
詩篇131篇只有3節。
There are only 3 verses in Psalm 131.
我唔知等你讀了以後，你有什麼感覺？
And I don't know how you feel or what do you feel after reading this 3
我嘅感
verses.
覺是，這個詩篇互人學習謙卑。
And it's my personal feeling that this psalm is teaching us humility.
這個詩篇只有3節，
There are only 3 verses.
因為謙卑嘅人會話袂真多，
Because a person who is humble will not speak very much.
真奇妙。
It's amazing.
驕傲嘅人話真多，
Most of the time, it's those who are proud that speaks a lot.
伊若無講家嘅意見，伊袂聽。
They will not stop until they voice out their own personal
因
opinions.
為感覺伊有真多物件，你唔知啊 ，I need to tell you，我互你知啊。
Because they feel like they have a lot of things that they need to share to inform you.
可見謙卑嘅人嘅話無真多。
So it's apparent that those who are humble will have less to say.
嗱，你真愛講話，
If you like to speak,
我真愛講老尾一個 decision。
and I like to be the one to make the final decision.
Maybe， 你唔是真謙卑嘅人
Maybe you're not as humble as you think you are.
，but
But
其實咱都唔是謙卑嘅人。
none of us are truly humble.
啲咱嘅生命，咱嘅 nature，咱嘅 natural man，咱嘅 carnal man，咱都唔是謙卑嘅人，
As carnal human beings, none of us are truly humble.
咱都是驕傲嘅人。
All of us are filled with
因為咱
pride.
嘅本質就是驕傲，
Because that's human nature, to be prideful.
罪就是驕傲嘅結果。
Sin is the result of our pride.
所以有一個主嘅一個 bishop 講一句真特別嘅話。
That's why there was this bishop who said this very unique
你講
statement.
驕傲是人老尾應該死嘅罪。
Pride is the last sin that needs to be defeated in our life.
你知什麼叫謙卑咧？
You know what it truly means to be
我
humble?
唔知你記定會講一個 definition of humility，你知啊
I？wonder if you still remember this definition that I shared with you.
謙卑是小看家己，唔是輕看家己。
Humility is not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less.
輕看家己是自卑，唔是謙卑。
To think less of yourself is to have self pity. It's not humility.
謙卑是小看家己，唔係看家己少嘅罪。
But if you're truly humble, you'll think of yourself less.
既然是安尼，咱這款嘅人怎學習謙卑咧？
How do we learn to be humble?
只有一個辦法，
There's only one method.
冇別嘅辦法。
There's no other
就
way.
是咱內面驕傲嘅生命、驕傲嘅靈，和上帝對付。
We need to submit our prideful self, that human nature that is within us, to the Lord.
若無經過對付嘅人，
If it has not been confronted by the Lord,
咱嘅生命永遠袂曉謙卑。
then we will never learn true humility.
Moses 聖經講是世界第一謙卑嘅人。
Moses was declared by God in the Bible as the most humble person in the whole world.
How come？
How come?
因為上帝將摩西放喺曠野40年，
Because God allowed Moses to be in the desert for 40 years.
這40年是對付摩西生命嘅驕傲。
And these 40 years were the time that God used to deal with the pride of Moses.
40年前
40 years ago,
，Moses 是埃及嘅王主。
he was a prince of Egypt.
聖經講，
The Bible
而
told
講
us
話創大字朗無在間。
whatever he does or he did or whenever he speaks, he spoke with authority.
而係嗰度家嘅規律 拯救浪中猶太人。
And he wanted to rely on his own strength to save all of Israel.
馬將伊一個人有當將一個以色列人拍死，
Imagine him being able to kill an Egyptian.
但係上帝冇乜認這個人，
But God refused to use him then
這個人真小計較，
because he thinks so much of
搞
himself.
到這個所在上帝唔介認這個人，
And God dare not use him.
所以幫佢抗議40年，
So God placed him in the wilderness for 40 years
佢幾個搖，
to tend to the flock of sheep
可以
there
叫佢生命和上帝對付。
so that his prideful nature will be confronted and defeated by the
等佢
Lord.
不集氣嘅時陣，
When he was 80 years old,
上帝這個異象及佢講話，
God spoke to him through a vision.
叫做 burning bush。
It's the burning bush phenomenon.
摩西頭一句講係咩嚟？
What was the first statement that Moses said?
我是神啊！
Who am I?
頭一句話，我是神啊！
That was his first statement. He
我
said,
做
Who am
啊
I?
嘛。
How can I do it?
你知啊不？嗱，40年前，
It was 40 years ago.
嗱，上帝何調伊？
And if God were to call
你
Moses,
知頭一句講係咩？
probably what Moses would have said,
你知我是神啊不？
You know who I am.
現在講我是神啊！
But right now he was asking the Lord, Who am I?
當這個人嘅生命受對付以後，
When your life is being transformed, the Lord,
你就知啊，我是神啊！
you would ask yourself, Who am I?
實真冇容易。
It's not
但係
easy.
詩篇111篇是神啊寫呀。
But who was the one who wrote Psalm 131?
King David，
It was a psalm of King
David
David.
是神啊！
Who was David?
猶太人第一偉大嘅君
He
王，
was the greatest king of Israel.
雖然就是戰術，就是勇術，
He was a warrior from birth.
將哥利亞拍死，
He was able to kill Goliath.
而是猶太人心目中嘅英雄 hero，
He was the greatest hero Israel ever had.
戰問第九，
He was very brilliant
個戰有學問，
and he was very educated.
詩篇差不多當中是以前嘅。
And most of the book of Psalm were written by David.
Psalm 23
Psalm 23
是 David 嘅詩篇。
is a psalm of
The
David.
Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing。
He tells us that the Lord is my shepherd and I shall not be in want.
當 David 讀琴嘅時陣，
When David plays the harp,
我首先俾把隻耳朵較搞。
I believe he's better than Brother Arrow.
You know why？
You know
因
why?
為當 David 讀琴嘅時陣會掛鬼啊！
Because when he plays music through his harp, he's able to cast out evil spirit.
我唔知把隻耳朵有法噃。
I don't know if Brother Arrow can cast out evil
Next
spirit with
time-
his music.
你人啦有鬼附在你車，把隻耳朵去看咪。
Next time, if some of you feels like you're possessed, please invite Brother Arrow to play music for you.
這個人真問題教，
David was very brilliant.
這個人有當謙卑噃。
How can he be humble? There's no way.
但是上帝可以謙卑。
But God made a way for him to be humble.
David 一生面對真最可能，
If you look at David's life, it was filled with trials and difficulties.
這個可能，
And through these
好
difficulties,
David 念不假記，
allowed him to know himself,
要當謙卑喺上帝嘅頭前。
that he can humble himself before the
其實
Lord.
這個道理唔是真健康明白
So，this lesson is not very difficult for us to
連中
comprehend.
國人都是按你講。
Even Chinese believe
你
that.
講天將這個大責任交給人嘅時陣，必大聲將可能大聲念交這個人
There's。a Chinese saying that tells us when heaven is about to confer a great office on a man, it first exercises him with suffering.
咱若冇經過可憐，
If we don't go through
咱
suffering,
嘅生命真更加好上帝應。
how can our lives be used by the Lord?
我大上你了解大必一生嘅經驗，
I'd like to share with you the experiences that David had in
我
his
解
life
釋詩篇31篇，
and to explain Psalm 131
你就更加明白。
for you to understand this even more.
David 嘅 experience，
The experience of King David.
David 嘅靈和上帝對付，可以找出一個謙卑嘅人。
He became a humble man when his spirit was dealt with by
How
God.
can I say this？因為 number one，David 嘅家嚟，上帝 allow 伊和親人傾跨伊。
At his house, he was looked down upon by his own family members.
當 David 真少年嘅時陣，
When David was very young,
上帝叫先知撒母耳到伊嘅厝嚟，
the prophet Samuel came to his house
甲伊嘅老爸講：
and spoke with his father.
我要安立你祈禱一個家，就做將來猶太人嘅王。
And Samuel said to his father, I would like to anoint one of your sons to become the future king of Israel.
David 有8個兄弟
David had 8 brothers.
，David 是老尾一個，
David was the youngest.
所以老爸就趕緊叫郎中家到嚟，郎中家到嚟。
So his father called all the sons home.
但是無必叫地逼到嚟。
except for David.
地逼仍然喺曠野歌謠。
David was there in the wilderness tending the sheep.
Why？
Why?
因為啲老爸心中這個驚是索美驚，是見啦，冇可能嘅啦。
Because in his father's eyes, David was the youngest. He was only a child and he had no abilities.
所以大家都嚟，地逼唔免都嚟，免啊免。
So his father called home all the sons except for David.
老爸冇誇等這個驚，
His father did not place much importance on David.
呢個出嚟可能傾誇嘅時陣，
When you are looked down upon by your family members,
那是你嘅唔對，
if it's your fault,
那你冇成熟，
it's because you're immature.
你就認罪悔改。
You need to confess and you need to repent.
那唔是
If it's not the case,
恭喜你咯 ，congratulation，
congratulations,
上帝要訓練你。
because God is training you.
等到經過一段時間以後，
After a period of time,
地逼細眼下已經去拍戰咯，
the three elder brothers of David went to war,
但是地逼仍然歌謠。
but David was left tending the sheep.
我一班猶太人及非利士人菲利士丁去拍戰，
One time there was a battle between Israel and Philistine people.
地逼老爸叫地逼去看乜眼下好些噃。
And his father sent him there to look at the welfare of his brother.
當地逼夠戰調嘅時陣，
When David arrived at the
就
battlefield,
聽到歌利亞招咗耶和華及耶和華嘅軍隊，
he heard that Goliath was cursing God and the people of Israel.
地逼真問題受氣，
David was very angry
地逼真聽上帝，
because David loved the Lord.
而唔咗何人招咗上帝嘅名，
And he would not allow other people to curse the name of the Lord.
佢就講一句話。
So he said,
神有當將這個未受割禮嘅非利士，這個非利士人拍死，
who can kill this uncircumcised Philistine?
伊阿兄聽到，
When his brother heard him,
阿兄唔是俄羅伊，
his brother did not praise him.
阿羅受氣。
Instead, the brother got angry
你
with
俾你
him.
嚟創啥？
Why are you here,
我
David?
知你是驕傲嘅，
I know you're prideful.
莫俾歌謠，
You don't want to tend the
多幾
sheep.
多幾多幾。
Go back home.
阿兄看見這個小弟，
His brothers looked down upon David.
係你知咩？
Dear brothers and
等
sisters,
你好人傾誇嘅時
when
陣，
people look down upon you,
我講
again,
是咱家己嘅 mistake，
is it because of our own
咱
mistake?
創大事無負責任，
It's because we are not responsible
啊
when
無
we do
聽
things.
無聽時代人講話，
We are not obedient. We are not submissive.
咱就悔改。
We need to repent.
那唔是
If it's not,
上帝要訓練你，
then God is
因
training
為你
you.
嘅生命需要對付。
Because there are things in your life that God needs to deal with.
你咪叫佢 testimony。
Let me give you a testimony.
27年前，
27 years
當
ago,
我成立畢業嚟香港嚟菲律賓侍奉嘅時
when
陣，
I came to the Philippines to serve after graduating,
成立畢業拿咗家己真問題教了不起，
after graduating, I felt that I was very good.
所以嚟侍奉上帝。
So I came to serve the
但係菲律
Lord.
賓發現原來這個環境是完全新嘅環境，
But when I came to the Philippines, I discovered that this was a truly different place.
連會都冇上，
Even our language are different.
所以喺呢度話 learn humble myself to learn。
So I need to humble myself to learn.
有一日，
One day,
我係牧師叫我去 office，
my pastor invited me to his
佢
office.
講國強啊，
He said,
我這個
Jeremiah,
成立義請我去講道。
there's this seminary that's requesting me to speak,
但是我冇法，我嘅咗冇法去。
but because of schedule conflict, I can't go.
你睇我去，
Go there
我
instead of
我唔
me.
好講話啊
But I said, I don't know how to speak.
！No no 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 no！
She
即個
said
成
no.
立要多戰罪人去，迄陣有不但安誒 refugee camp 難民也喺遐所在。
It was during the time of the Bataan refugee camp.
因為難民是講廣東話，
And all
廣東話廣東話。
So all these
Wow.
Vietnamese refugees are Cantonese speakers.
廣東話是 my mother tongue。
So Cantonese is my mother tongue.
講 no problem，
And I said, no problem.
所以答應佢。
So I agreed.
After 2 days，
After 2 days,
叫我去 office，
the pastor called me back.
講國強啊，
Said, Jeremiah,
取消咯。
the engagement has been canceled.
我講喂，
I said, why?
佢講伊聽到我冇要去，叫別人去，講唔免嘅咯。
When the seminary heard that I cannot go and I'm asking somebody else to go, they said, no, never mind.
我牧師嗰嚿講，係啦，伊真夠講啦，你真夠講，肯定會真夠講啦。
And my pastor was saying to the seminary, well, the person who's going to speak there is a fluent Cantonese speaker.
免。
And they said, never mind.
後來我講冇 budget 冇紙啊冇
And they said
紙，
they don't have a budget.
啊免紙。
And my pastor was telling me, you don't have to give him anything.
你講到咩講？啊是免啊。
And the seminary said, never mind, we don't, we have to cancel
我
it.
聽到這個消息嘅時
When I
候
heard it,
，you know， And then you stumble depressed, okay?
I felt a bit depressed.
But I know
But I know
God want me to learn something.
that God is wanted me to learn something then.
呢就係我未嚟菲律賓嘅時陣，
Before I came to the Philippines,
我係教會事奉，
I was serving in my home church in Hong
我開
Kong.
隻嘅Sundays Bible study class，
I'm leading a Sunday Bible study class.
先開始
It's a new
有
Bible study
12
class.
人報名
There are 12 persons who enroll.
，after 3 months，
After 3 months,
我係班變咗120個人，
my class have ballooned to 120 persons.
我係教是全教會第一代嘅 Sunday school
And
嘅。
my class was the biggest class in the whole church.
等我嚟菲律賓嘅時陣，
When I came to the Philippines,
我係頭一間教會佢一個 Sunday school 嘅 class，
I opened a Sunday school class in my church.
it's so amazed，
I'm so amazed.
而且12人報名
12 person enrolled
，because they heard about 這個 imported 啊，
because they
列
heard
口嘅啊，
there was this imported Bible
所以
teacher.
12人報名。
So 12 person enrolled.
After 3 months，
After 3 months,
全人嘅人，
there are only 2 left.
大家走了。
Everybody left.
全人嘅姊妹哦，我確實可憐過我冇俾離開啦。
Probably these 2 sisters had pity on me. They refused to give up.
強嘅我追住你追殺過嘅。
So they endured me for 3 months.
I know。
I know.
God want you to learn something。
God wanted me to learn something.
教會，
Dear church,
咱嘅生命是真驕嘅啦，
in our life, all of us are prideful.
咱嘅靈能無受對付，
If we do not deal with it,
上帝無通應咱。
God will not be able to use
David
us.
雖然地出來受上帝訓練，
David was dealt with by God from a young age at his
即係
home
佢 family members
through his family members
train he，
who trained him
你哋 humble
to
himself。
humble himself.
當 David 出來嘅時陣，
When David came out,
你哋國家追趕嘅時陣，
when he started working for the king,
用這度保羅嚟揾到佢。
God used Saul to envy him and to
呢
train him.
陣 David 已經開始出嚟咯，
David came out during that
已
time,
經將哥利亞拍死咯。
and he already had slain Goliath.
等佢到嚟嘅時陣，
So when he came back
哇
home,！
人 welcome David，
people welcomed David,
擼嘅超掛。
and the ladies there
佢話
sang,
講大衛掃羅太死千，
King Saul killed his thousands.
哇！掃條佬真快嘅
Saul, when he heard this, felt happy.
，I kill thousand，OK？
And I killed thousands.
但係擼係繼續超落去
But，they continued singing.
你講大衛太死萬，
But David killed his 10,000s.
哇！掃羅隨其前面隨笑氣，
Saul's countenance had changed. He felt angry and he felt jealous.
瓜太千，David 太萬，
I only killed 1,000, and they attributed 10,000 to David.
揾到
He became jealous.
揾到，
He became jealous.
差不多20萬年嘅中間，
In 20 plus years,
掃羅就冇俾幫 David，
and Saul refused to let go of David.
佢接佢，佢睇佢。
He pursued him and tried to kill him.
這20幾年嘅訓練嘅中
In
間
these 20 plus years of training for David,
，David 講到一句話，
David said one thing.
你小未教佢講一句話。
You cannot imagine him saying
In
this.
the First Samuel chapter 24:14，
In 1 Samuel
以
24:14,
及掃羅講：
he said,
你
Saul,
講昂啊，你出嚟邪神啊，你接神啊，你接隻屎鳩，一隻殺烏啦啲啊！
against whom has the king of Israel came out? Who are you pursuing? A dead dog? A flea?
David 將多線人哥利亞拍死，
David was the one who killed Goliath.
多年佢嘅國家特擺拍戰特擺贏。
And every time he went out to war for Israel, he had
你
victory.
講我一隻屎鳩人
Yet he
嘅，
described himself as a dead dog.
更加20話你嘅訓練強備到這個所在，
After 20 plus years of training,
我一個屎鳩人啊！
he only looked at himself as a dead dog.
我相信 David 講這句話唔是假啊強備。
I'm sure this is not false humility on his
其
part.
實就係咁樣教，其實就係嗱唔是上帝幫助我得吉撕裂掃羅嘅超嘅嚟。
I believe that he truly felt if it were not for God's protection, he would have been killed by King Saul.
咱可能人真夠假強備啦。
We know a lot of people here with false
你
humility.
講是唔是啊？你
Are you like that?
你請佢出嚟食，
You invite them home to eat,
做一杯嚟菜。
and you prepared a lot of dishes for them.
哦，香港豬啊！
And you say, oh, you're so
Oh,
good at cooking.
yeah.
Oh, it looks so nice.
你講什麼啊？
How would you say?
唔係啦，青菜豬啦，青菜豬啦
And。you say, no, no, it's just casual food.
所以你青菜豬，我青菜食咯啊！
So it's just casual food, then why should I value it?
七杯嚟菜青菜豬咯。
Just only 7 or 8 dish, and yet you claim it's only casual food.
伊係最啱你講，你唔最啱你講我。
He can speak like that, but you cannot
你解
speak like
講
that.，
哇！七杯嚟菜未好豬啊！你啊，排就喺邊試啊？
You cannot say to them, you prepare 7 or 8 dishes, and none of them taste good.
你未嗨啦你
You probably won't be invited. to them.
，forever 你冇等好你請你啦。
They will not invite you forever.
有一擺，
One time,
我見一個人嘅出嚟，
I went to somebody's home.
呢個講牧師啊，
He said, Pastor,
我裝一個特別coffee，special coffee 好你啉。
I have prepared a special coffee for you.
哇！伊看到伊真緊張啦，
And I saw him very excited.
我講 OK，
And I said,
呢
okay.
度煮。
So he roasted the coffee,
你有
prepared the
我念咯
coffee,
個，
and let me
我念
drink
一
the
出以
coffee.
後啊，
After
輕
tasting
輕
one,
配出去啊，
I almost spit it out
但是我就唔敢配出去啊，
because I dare
我
not spit
強
it
強
out.
吞落去啊。
And I had to swallow it.
伊問我走，
And he asked me,
我
how
講
is it?
special，
It's special.
你知緊下無？
You know why?
真鹹啊！
Because it's very salty.
即個唔使聽到什麼講呢？人講要到 coffee 度其實鹽落去咯，
Because he heard that somebody told him you have to put salt into
但
coffee.
是那是其實一兩粒，伊是規個 spoon 騎落去。
Probably the person meant to put a few drop of salt, but he put a full spoonful
我
of
都唔敢
salt.
隨鹹伊啊！
I cannot
我
criticize
驚
him.
佢黐面啊！
I was afraid that he might get angry.
Special，
And I said, special.
好大啲嘢小啤，
Good thing his sister
就去試看咪。
and tried it out.
哎呀講，哎呀很鹹啊！
And he said, brother, it's so salty.
這個人叫做破 T，呢個都叫做假啲。我說咱都唔該鹹人啊，
We dare not criticize people.
咱就是安尼嘛。
We are like that.
你要經過20話年嘅訓練以後，
After 20 plus years of training for
你練
David,
不家己。
he knew himself.
我一個死狗人嘅啊，
I'm only a dead dog.
跟人嚟接掛。
How come you're
嗱
pursuing
冇
me?
經過這20話年嘅訓練，
If it were not for this 20 plus years of
你的
training,
確未講一句
he
話，
probably wouldn't say this.
叫做幫真
May
啊！
the Lord help us.
特別係最難面好上帝嘅拍，
And in his sin, God struck David.
特別一生有人嘅真大嘅罪，
There are two major sins that David committed in his life
頭將個拔示巴犯奸淫，
when he committed adultery with Bathsheba.
後來個將拔示巴丈夫拍死，
And he killed Bathsheba's husband.
第二佢生人。
Second is when he made a census of the people that he had.
時間嘅關係，我只講頭一項。
So because of time constraint, I'm going to only discuss the first sin.
當大衛犯罪以後，
When David committed the sin,
上帝真生氣。
God was very angry.
雖然大衛已經認罪
Even though David confessed already,
，listen，咱犯罪，咱係最哋認罪，
when we commit sin, we can confess.
上帝係赦免人。
God will forgive us.
但你記得，
But remember,
冇一個罪冇多嚟結果 consequence，
we will not be able to escape the consequences of our sin.
罪係當赦免，
We can forgive sin.
但是罪嘅結果得個得到你，
The consequences of the sin will still follow us.
所以唔當犯罪。
So don't sin.
上帝及大衛講，
God told David,
對打以後刀劍未離開你
from
嘅，
this day on, the sword will never depart from your house.
所以大衛一生真艱苦。
That's why his whole life was very
你
difficult.
睇死一個人，
He killed one person.
你出嚟死了4個人。
God took four people's life in his
頭一個
family.
死是以及拔示巴犯奸淫所死嘅囝，
The first one to die was the baby conceived when he committed adultery with
這
Bathsheba.
個囝死出嚟咯，
When the child was born,
應該已經有一歲兩歲咯，
probably 1 or 2 years old.
你已經冇悔改吧？
David did not
上帝
repent.
就拍伊個囝，
So God punished his
伊
son.
個囝真嚴重破病得要死咯。
So his son got sick critically.
大衛7日7暗喺上帝頭前連罪兼食祈禱，
David fasted for 7 days and nights
但係上
before
帝
the
冇
Lord.
冇聽伊嘅祈禱
But。the Lord refused to listen to him.
After 7 days，
After 7 days,
伊個囝死咯，
his son died.
David 戰萬大聰明，
And David was so sad.
He got
He was
the-
very intelligent,
看到
rather.
呢個僕人講話，
When he saw his servants speaking
看
among
到呢個僕
themselves,
人嘅 facial expression，
and he saw the facial expression of his
你
servants,
就係而家師咯。
he knew that his son had died.
你講是唔是我係家師咯
So he called them and said, and asked, did my son die?
？Yes，
And they said, yes.
David 起嚟
So he stood up.
就去贈役，
So he washed himself,
就去敬拜上帝，
and he went to worship the Lord,
就去食。呢
and he went to eat.
個僕人唔明白，
And his servants couldn't
講
understand.
Master，
He said, Master,
how come？
how come?
你而家未死嘅時陣，
Before your son died,
你未食未困，
you cannot sleep, you
冇贈
fasted, you didn't wash
現
yourself.
在你而家死咯。
But right now your son is dead.
你去贈役，
You washed yourself,
你去食，
and you
你去
feasted,
敬拜上
and
帝，
you went and worshiped.
奇怪啊！
They find it very strange.
佢講一句話，
And David answered,
我係驚未死嘅時陣，
Before my son died,
我祈禱，
I prayed,
叫上帝可憐我、憐憫我。
and I begged for the Lord's mercy on me.
既然上帝冇聽，
But the Lord did not listen to my prayer.
現在我冇咁樣按你講祈禱咯。
Right now, I don't need to pray like that
我係驚
anymore
未個到嚟咯，
because I cannot bring back my son.
但是我俾佢扯。
But I'm going to the Lord.
你看咪？Sorry，那是你，
If it were you,
可能上大事。
something like this
你
happened to
祈
you,
禱7日7暗，
and you prayed for 7 days
兼
and
着
nights,
祈禱，
and you fasted,
主冇聽你嘅祈禱
and，the Lord did not grant you your
你會
wish,
做咩反應？
how will you respond?
你係多少佢？
Probably be very angry.
真啊！
And you say,
主冇
why?
聽我祈禱
How
啊！
come you're not listening to my
冇呀冇
prayer?
呀，上帝啊！
Is there truly a God or
我
not?
我家旁邊冇意見冇氣靈啊！
And there's no, I cannot find healing for my
那
child.
祈禱那不低啊，死
The
咗
more I
啊！
prayed, the worse he got. He died.
你係 question 正罪上帝。
And you start to question the Lord.
Let me tell you，
Let me tell you,
這個人啊，
a person
嗱常問上帝 why，
who that often asks the Lord why,
這個人我相信熱靈是真驕傲。
I believe that person has a very prideful spirit.
你嗱而家你心內誰講 why， 你就是真驕傲嘅人。
If you always ask why, then probably you're a very prideful person.
你嗱明白上帝是你嘅創造者，
If you truly acknowledge that the Lord is your
你嗱
creator,
明白
and
你是
if-
你嘅主，
and you acknowledge him as your Lord,
你唔敢夾上嚟講 why， 咁
you
嗱，
dare not ask the Lord why.
你嚟講 how
And you say, how?
how
How?
how can I do what should I do？
What shall I do? How can I do this?
你唔夾上嚟講 why，
We will not ask the Lord why.
天做上帝創唔到大志，
It's like we're questioning God and what he did.
你唔敢問上帝
David dare not ask the Lord why.
why，因為就係這是上帝是上帝
Because he knew God was God, is God, rather.
，let God be God，
So he said, let God be God.
叫做幫襯人。
May the Lord help
當你
us.
講到 David 一生以後，
So after looking at David's life
你嚟
experience,
掛 Psalms 131。
let's look at Psalm
你就講
131.
明白David 之後 can be 表現出嚟嘅
And you can understand more on how David became humble and,
Because
and
verse
his
1.
manifestation of humility.
第二節。
Verse 1.
如果耶和華我係善為狂傲，我係目照無告，但係重大及測為偷嘅大志，我唔假嘅。
My heart is not proud, Lord. My eyes are not haughty. I do not concern myself with great matters or things too wonderful for me.
你講我係善為狂傲，
David said, my heart is not proud.
當大必受上帝對付以後，
When God dealt with David,
呢頭先嘅功課學習善為驕 heart is not proud。
the first lesson that David learned was to learn how not to be proud in his heart.
聖經講上人是看人嘅外表，
People, the Bible tells us that we look at the outward appearance,
但係上帝是看人嘅內心，
but the Lord looks at our heart.
所以上帝真正看透人嘅心。
So God looks through our heart and He
呢
knows
一種
our
一個
heart.
真正謙卑嘅人，
For a person who's truly humble,
頭一個學習處理呢個心嘅問
the
題。
first is to learn how to control his heart.
有人喺外口真就真謙卑，
There are people who outwardly looks very
哎
humble.
呀，行路行一慢，
When they walk slowly.
看到人就嗨好。
When they see people, they say, "Hi, good morning,"
講句也優秀喎。
and they are very gentle in their
你
speech.
好，
You're good. How are
謙
you?
卑哦，謙
They
卑。
look very humble.
外表真謙卑，
Outwardly, they look very
但係
humble.
可能
But it's
呢個
most likely
心真萬大教
there's a
練仔啊，
possibility that he's full of pride in his heart.
這個叫假冒為善。
These are called hypocrites.
Let me give you a definition of hypocrite.
Let me define hypocrisy for you.
Outward devotion without inward conviction.
These are people with outward devotion, but without inward conviction.
外口是真敬虔，
Outwardly, they look very
但是
devoted,
內心無一個信念，
but there's no conviction inside of them.
這個就假冒偽善。
These are hypocrites.
所以求上帝幫助
May the
你，
Lord help
你就
us.
保守你嘅心。
You need to protect and look after your heart.
所羅門講一句話，
King
你
Solomon
講你就
said,
保守你嘅心，也嘅保守一切，因為一生嘅果效是對心出嚟，
above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it.
心真重要。
The heart is very important.
咱知啊。
We know
當你聽人講話嘅時陣，
when we listen to people
這
speak,
個人嘅話，
the way he speaks,
互你知影這個人是驕還是謙卑。
for you, you will understand, you can discern whether that person is humble or
有
proud.
人講話真責驕個，
There are people who are very proud when they speak.
有人講話真謙卑個。
There are people who are very
所以你
humble.
聽伊講什麼話，
So you listen to how they speak,
其實唔是。
but that's not the way.
More than this，
But there's much more than
耶
this.
穌互人知啊。
Jesus told us
耶穌講，因為心內所充滿，嘴嚟就講出嚟。
what is filling in our hearts will come out of our mouth.
這個嘴啊，
Our mouth.
像就這個 fountain， 這個
It's just like a
水
fountain.
泉，OK。但係這個嘴出來是什麼樣的嘴呢？
What kind of water will flow out of the
是
fountain?
depend on 這個 fountain 裡面什麼樣的物件。
It depends on what's inside the
這
fountain.
個嘴是苦嘅，
If it's a bitter
出
water,
來就是苦嘅。
it'll come out bitter.
嗱，甜嘅
If it's sweet,
出來就是甜
it'll
嘅。
come out sweet.
所以你裡面什麼樣的物件，
What's in your heart?
出來什麼樣的物件。
What kind of things will come out of you?
耶穌誇真扎潛，
Jesus knew
所以
everything.
don't listen to the word only，
Don't just listen to the words of
就
man,
誇這個人嘅心，
but you look at the heart.
叫做幫襯
May
啊。
the Lord help us.
咱嘅心真重要。
Our heart is very important.
特別講，我嘅心未狂傲，
David said, my heart is not proud,
and then 呢，我嘅目睭未高大。
and my eyes are not haughty.
什麼意思呢？
What does this mean?
你嚟講，無人看到你嘅心，
If people cannot see your heart,
但是人就看到你嘅目睭。
but people can see your eyes.
目睭真重要。
The eyes are very important.
同個人講，目睭是靈魂嘅燈啊。
The Bible tells us that
唔是聖經講嘅啊。
Chinese said that the eyes are the window to the soul.
It's the window of my soul。
It's the eyes are the windows to
將我
our
裡
soul.
面嘅物件，呢個目睭顯出嚟，
We can see into the souls of people through their
實
eyes.
際是安尼。
This is true.
你注意人嘅目睭，
Look at their eyes.
人若單純還是複雜，
You can see if a person is simple or
你
complicated.
注意嘅目睭，
Look at their eyes.
實際注意嘅目睭，
You look at their eyes.
未偏敵。
They will not
我
lie.
信有人真夠騙，真夠騙
There，are people who love to pretend,
但係 sooner or later，
but sooner or later,
your eyes will betray you。你嘅目睭就出賣了
your
你，
eyes will betray
呢個
you.
叫做唔知啊。
You probably won't notice it
有人
yourself.
看人是安尼，
There are people who look at people like
呢個
this.
叫做唔知啊吧。
They don't know.
有人聽我講道是安尼，
There are people who listen to me speak like
我知
that.
影要 challenge 佢。
Probably they're challenging
你
me.
哋講什麼啊？
What are you saying?
我知啊，
I know.
你嘅目睭已經將你出賣，你自己唔知
Because
啊。
your eyes are betraying you and you're not aware of
我
it.
嘅心未狂傲，我嘅目睭未高大，
My heart is not proud and my eyes are not haughty.
所以你注意。
So
還是心嘅
take
問
note,
題。
it's still a problem of the heart.
但你第三個大字
But
真
the
特別，
third is very unique.
重大參無通嘅大字，我冇俾驚。
Things that I do not concern myself with great matters or things too wonderful.
Great matter 是大大字
Great matter are things that are big, huge.
，thing 係 too wonderful 是奇妙嘅大字。
Things too wonderful are things that I probably cannot comprehend.
你要講，我冇俾驚，我冇俾驚。
And I'm not going to
Okay.
concern myself with them.
stop 啊，stop 啊。
Stop.
約書亞記第一章講這樣大字，
Joshua chapter 1 said,
上帝及約書亞講
when God spoke to
講
Joshua
三拜
for 3 times, he said,
，Joshua， 剛強壯大，剛強壯大，剛強壯大，
be strong and be courageous.
所以
3
叫你
times.
勇敢起來闖大字。
God is telling him to be brave.
David 講我唔俾佢闖大字，唔俾闖大字。
But David said, I'm not going to concern myself with
即
these
係你個
things.
冷是唔是千做活淡薄，叫做 contradict，即係矛盾咁先。
Are these two people contradicting each
約
other?
書亞講 be strong and courageous。
But the Bible tells us that God told Joshua to be strong and courageous.
David 講 no，唔當錯，唔當錯，唔當錯。
But David is saying, no, I'm not going to concern myself with these things.
啊，你闖嘅時候冇俾闖啊
So are you supposed to do things or not?
？Let me tell you，
Let me tell you,
唔是闖冇俾闖嘅問題，
it's not whether you want to do it or not.
只係你嘅態度嘅問題。
It's all a matter of attitude.
為什麼闖？
Why do you do it?
為什麼冇俾創？
Why is it that you're not,
即係
refuse to do it?
呢個創大字 attitude，
It's all in the attitude that you have.
有人真奇怪，
There are people who's very strange.
然後冇創大大字，
If they don't achieve great things,
而冇俾創大字。
then they refuse to be involved.
For example，
For example,
教會講請你哋鬥沙更嗬，
I'm inviting you to help out in the church.
創啥？
And what am I supposed to
哎
do?
呀，最近咱欠名 usher，OK？
Right now we are lacking ushers.
你係做 usher 噃？
Would you like to help out as ushers?
哎呀，sorry 啊，我冇點靜啊，sorry。
And you probably say, sorry, I don't have time.
usher，
You said, usher.
usher，
Just be an usher.
哎呀，最近教會欠名最講完 speaker，OK？
There's a need for speakers in the church.
No problem。
And he said, no
When?
problem.
Tell me,
When?
tell me.
Tell me when.
大大字個，
Because it's something big.
咱我愛創什麼大字？
What do we want to do?
咱愛創大大字。
Do we want to be
為
involved
啥
in
我創
great
大大
things?
字？
Why are we wanting to involve
為
ourselves
家
in
己
great
創
things?
大大字。
It's because we want to do it for ourselves.
你會講 no 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 no，
When we say no,
大大字我唔家己創。
but David said, no, I dare not,
所
I
以
don't want to
唔
concern myself
是
with great
大
matters.
字嘅本性，
It's not the matter,
是
it's
這個人
not the
創大
concern.
創大字嘅態度。
It's not the matter that is the concern here, but it's the attitude.
你記得
Remember this.
耶穌講，
Jesus said,
雖行大頂面中心，大大字教學你。
if you're faithful in little things, then God will entrust you with bigger things.
OK，你未give you a testimony。
Let me give you a testimony.
當我最傳道人嘅夢，最30年前去讀神學最傳道嘅時陣，
When I entered Bible school to be a pastor,
我係 principal 問我一個問題：
my principal asked me this question.
你畢業了，你要創啥大字啊？
After graduating, what do you want to do?
你想我冇有答伊喎，
And I don't know how to answer.
我戇起啊！
And I was shocked.
我唔知啊！
I said, I don't know.
啊，你要跟你讀神學啊？
And how come you're in the Bible school?
我是愛一生侍奉上帝。
And I said, because I want to serve the Lord for my whole
最
life.
係咩啊？
Serve the Lord as what?
我唔知。
I said, I don't know.
我覺這個神學，這個二雕講這個戇嘅，
Probably the principal was saying this person is ignorant.
唔係有見啊，冚啦戇唔係有見。
But then he said, never mind.
即等我畢業以後，
And after I graduated,
我嚟去裏邊，
I came to the Philippines.
我從來唔不笑着，我係嚟去裏邊。
I've never imagined that I'll be here in the Philippines.
我是制唔制啊？
I have no idea.
就嚟搞咗去裏邊。
But I'm here.
我投資你，
The first year,
你
the first
去
year,
裏邊教會侍奉。
when I'm in the Philippines serving in the
你
church,
睇我最想咩喎？
you know what was I doing?
講道，
Was I a speaker?
貴你講3拜，
The whole year I only spoke 3 times.
4個月講1拜。
Every 4 months I spoke once.
按你創啥其他？
The rest of the time, what was I doing?
我最 usher，
I was an usher.
我嗱冇講到，我就是教會 usher。
If I'm not a speaker, then I'm the usher of the church.
But tell you，
Let me tell you.
我是最好嘅 usher。
But I'm the best usher.
You know why？
You know why?
Number one，
Number 1,
我唔不接拜話教。
because I'm never late.
Usher，listen to me，
Usher, listen to me.
我唔不話教。
I've never been late.
我講唔話，我講冇話教喎，唔是準時嚟喎。
When
我
I
是10個分鐘已經15 minutes before，我的確喺禮拜等。
not only was I never late, not only was I on time, but I arrived 15 minutes earlier
因為我知我是 usher 啊，
because I knew I was an usher.
我就較早嚟啊，
I have to come earlier.
我嗱話嚟咧，
If I'm late,
準時嚟咧，
if I'm just on time,
我就太神啊！
who am I supposed to usher in?
大家姐姐，我嚟，
Everybody's sitting there already.
有人安尼，大家姐姐落，伊嚟，你做啥 usher，大家姐 usher 是咩 usher 是
But
咩？
you're just
Don't
on
forget my
time.
usher 咯。
There's no need for you to be here.
So usher，learn
So
from
the
example，
ushers lead by example,
not just on time，
not just on time,
15 minutes before。
but be here
其實
15
每一
minutes
個侍奉
before.
上帝嘅人，
In fact, for everybody who's serving
都
the
應該
Lord,
安尼，
you have to have
唔
this
追上帝
attitude.
等你，唔追我等你。
Don't let God wait for you.
今時唔那是安尼，
Not only that,
我唔那是會真準時。
not only was I very much on
當我
time
教大人嘅時陣，
when I'm helping out
我
people,
的家多到最好嘅笑容嚟 welcome
I
你，
gave them my best smile.
我就幫襯人。
May the Lord help
我嗱
us.
你講其他創啥啲啊？
Then the rest of the time, what do you do?
因為我經過圖書館嘅訓練，
Because I was trained in the library.
因為你前學醫，我師弟是圖書館嘅 librarian，我管過嘅前學醫圖書館。
Because for 4 years in Bible school, I was the librarian.
所以 the first year，
Sorry, the first year here,
我是阿西基這間教會 圖書館將貴嘅圖書館重新畫一個新嘅。
I was there I was assigned to the library of the church and I changed the whole system.
This is my work for the first year.
That was my work for the first year.
上帝冇叫我創大大志，
God did not want me to do great things,
但是 I'm faithful to do my ministry。
but I remained faithful in doing my
所以求
ministries.
上帝幫襯
May
你，
the Lord help us.
唔是創大志冇創大志，
It's not whether we do things or not,
是咱創大志嘅態度。
but what matters most is the attitude that we
無論
bring.
是大大志、小大志
It doesn't concern us whether it's a big event or a
，we are
small event,
faithful to do the ministry。
but we remain faithful in doing our
咱
ministry.
哋教會 by the God grace，
By God's grace, our church,
咱望下年咱開始一個 new church building。
we can start the construction of a new church
我哋講
building.
這係一個 huge budget、huge project。
And this is really a huge project.
有時我家己笑，我家己驚。
Sometimes if I sit down and think about it, I feel afraid.
有一擺我甲我咱嘅這個 building chairman 講話時，伊講伊也是驚，我也是驚，BB 驚。
And I was speaking with the building chairman and I said, I'm afraid. And he said, I'm afraid too. Both
這
of
個
us
是
were
個
afraid
真大嘅工作，
because this is a huge
實
undertaking.
在真大嘅代志，咱實在唔敢行。
This is such a big undertaking that we dare not do it.
但是我常常提醒我家己，
But I have to constantly remind
這
myself,
個唔是為咗 CBCB 創代志，
I'm not doing this for CBCP.
唔是為我創代志，
I'm not doing this for
唔是為
myself.
為你創代志，
It's not for you
是為咗
doing.
上帝創代志。
I'm doing this for the Lord.
這個是為上帝國度嘅代志。
And we're here for God's kingdom.
你明我意思無？
Because
你就明白創這個代志嘅 motive，呢個動機是什麼？
what is our motive in doing this?
叫做幫襯啊！
May the Lord help us.
好，啊你地邊嘅秘訣跌到落咧？
And where lies the secret of David's humility?
呢個是 verse 2。
It's in verse 2. But I've calmed and quieted myself. I'm like a weaned child with its mother. Like a weaned child, I am content.
Okay, let me explain to you。
Let me explain this to you.
特別講，我係心遷咗一個囡仔，一個 wind child，一個開始無隻老母練嘅囡仔，啲老母嘅懷裡。
I'm like a child that has being weaned off from being breastfed by my mother, and I'm just there with my mom.
你知啊？嗰陣時我當中老母飼囡仔是食顧老母嘅練咁先。
Do you know in the past, all of the child were raised, were breastfed child
都冇可能有什麼苗泡嘅物件。
because there's no formula or milk powder.
現在重新，咱嘅嗰嚟，咱嘅太太咧老母用練嚟飼囡仔咁
Right
先。
now, we're encouraging all the mothers to breastfeed their
因為
child.
it's the best milk for the baby。
Breast milk is still the best milk for
有
babies.
經驗嘅老母可能知啊。
For mothers who have experienced, they
當
will
一個
share
囡
this.
仔到一個歲子，
When a child reaches a certain age,
為咗嗰隻練啊啦，
they no longer need to be breastfed
真排泄啦啦，
because it's embarrassing
因為
already,
未到限啊啦。
or else they will not grow.
但係即係囡仔幾時隻老母嘅練，幾時隻練，幾時隻練，
But they're so used to being breastfed.
之後創咧，
What do?
老母啊將啲即個犁頭裡面剝淡薄嘅物件落去，
The mom will put some things on their breast,
淡薄烤、淡薄生、淡薄辣，
something spicy there.
等囡仔食落去嘅時候，
So
Wow.
when the child starts to suck,
跟
they
住
will be
媽媽
surprised.
苗 expire 去啊，
How come the milk of the mom
有排
expired?
啲嘛，
It no longer tastes
你
good.
就先就烤咯噃，
They'll start crying.
囡仔烤，老母咪是烤，
If the child cries, the mom will cry
但
too.
是無法，
But there's nothing you can do.
你臨時啊你繼續食你嘅練。
Because if you don't do that, then they'll continue to be
Oh,
to
跟住你過嚟
suck your
咯。
breast. The next day,
嗰度縮咯，
they'll try to suck
一
your
縮
breast
落
again.
去，我當時咪個生生啊，哇expire 咯啊，
And they say, Mom, your breast milk has
再
expired
交一個
already.
時間，
Up till one time,
呢個囡仔冇路行咯，
they have nowhere else to do, or
Yeah, but don't yell,
nowhere
no.
else to go. They're
呢個食
hungry.
飯嘅物件咯啊
They。will start to eat
Hold
other
up.
things.
At that moment，
At that moment,
呢啲老母嘅懷裡，
when you carry the child in your arm,
已冇別嘅目的咯，
they have no other motive.
已冇嗰隻練咯，
They no longer want to suck your breast.
呢就倒你媽媽嘅懷裡
They are just content being in your arm and to sleep there.
你明我意思喎
Do you understand what I'm saying?
？Think about it。
Think about this.
嗱，老母嘅練是代表住我哋恩典，我哋恩賜 gift and grace。
When we think of the breast milk as a grace or gift,
這個老母將呢個恩典好這個囡仔，
and the mother is sharing the gift and grace to the child,
這個老母咧
what about the mother?
就是 giver of the gift，呢是
The
蘇
mother,
恩嘅人。
the mother becomes the giver of the gift.
當咱嚟到上帝嘅頭前嘅
When
時
we
陣，
come before the Lord,
咱要斜什麼？
what do we look for?
你要斜 giver or give？
Are you looking for the giver or are you looking for the gift?
我跟你講，
Let me tell you,
大家人都是斜 give，
everybody looks for the gift,
會啊冇呀？
true or not.
看到老爸嘅時陣，
When you see the father,
老爸係指
you ask for money.
指
Ask for
指
money.
指，
You ask for money.
看到老爸就討指。
When you see your dad, you ask for money.
什麼時候你及嚟講老爸講，爸爸 I love you。
When is the time you go to your father and you embrace him and say, I love you,
我話
father?
即係見得就是成熟啦咯。
That person is a very mature person.
你明我意思冇？
You understand what I'm
咱就
saying?
是安尼。
We are like
咱嚟
that.
到上帝嘅頭前，
When we come before the
咱呢
Lord,
度上帝嘅恩典，
we receive God's
呢
grace.
度才幹，
We get
呢度
talent.
名聲，
We get fame.
呢度權柄，
We get
呢
authority.
度水。
And we get
We
beauty.
all kind of gifts。
All kinds of gifts we get
但是
from
問
God.
題是安尼，
But the problem is,
咱永遠 I did，
all that we want in our life are the gifts.
跌夠，咱無愛托物件咯，
Until the point that we don't want gifts anymore.
咱愛上帝咯，
The moment that we start to want God more than the gifts,
你就開始謙卑咯，
that's the only time you start to be humble.
因為你嘅生命改變。
Because your life has been transformed.
中國人有一句話
There's a Chinese saying,
講：人到無求品自高。
seek no excess, finds you noble.
當這個人無別嘅要求嘅時
When
陣，
a person has no other requirements,
伊嘅品格自然真高級。
and then his character will become very noble.
For example，
For example,
我真照顧這個人
I take care of this
，I
person
love this guy，OK？
because I love this guy.
Because
Because
我知這個人真有錢，
I know he's very rich.
我嚟對伊好，
If I'm good to him,
伊又對我好，
he'll be good to me.
對我好啊，好好啊。所以哇靠，December 你知呀？December 聖誕嚟
And you know,
嗬，
December is here
這個是有要求咧。
because we want something in
咱
return.
對人好，
We are good to other
有人有
people
這個 motive，
because we have this motive.
這個 motive 和這個人嘅品格真高。
And because of our motives, it cheapens our character.
你若對這個人好，
If you're good to that
冇別
person
嘅原因，
because of no other reason,
你嘅 character 自然真高尚，真
your
noble，
character will become very noble.
相反。
The same way,
咱嚟到主嘅頭前嘅
when
時陣
we，come before the Lord,
咱就一個囡仔
it's like a child,
，wind child，
just like a
已
weaned
經
child,
鍛鍊嘅囡仔，
a person who's been weaned off
喺
mother's
上帝
milk.
嘅懷裡，
And we are there,
冇
there at
求
the
什麼
Father's
物件。
arm. We are not requiring anything
只
from the
叫
Lord.
上帝。
We just want to be with
你
the
記
Lord.
住，謙卑唔是什麼冇，特別冇必做。
Humility is not the refusal to do anything.
謙卑是上帝若無動靜，我就冇必做。
Humility is not wanting to do anything if God is not with him.
我講
in it.
摩西是第一謙卑嘅人，
Moses is the most humble
但是
person.
摩西哋法老嘅頭前是專責問題剛強。
But Moses was very strong and very principled before Pharaoh.
因為摩西就係上帝及伊動靜，
Because Moses knew that God was
我
with
做
him.
上帝愛我做嘅代志。
And he was doing things that the Lord wanted him
其
to do.
實你讀聖經看咪，
If you look at the Bible,
啲十八嘅災難嘅中
the
間，
10 plagues that fell on Egypt,
法老有三擺 give in，
3 times Pharaoh gave in.
頭一擺，
First time,
呢個摩西講：，
he said to
誒
Moses,
追，
he said, okay,
你唔當離開埃及，啲即嘅所在
Don't
敬拜呢個上帝。
don't depart or don't leave Egypt. Worship the Lord here in Egypt.
摩西講 no，
Moses said, no.
第二擺，
Second,
識嘅，攬嘅機，你攬嘅機，擼嘅、鼓嘅、搖嘅落嚟。
but the second time, Pharaoh said, okay, let the men go, but not the women, nor the flocks or the herds.
摩西講 no，
Moses said, no.
第三擺，
The third,
識嘅，攬嘅鼓、攬嘅擼嘅見到浪中機，鼓搖落嚟，好噃？
okay, allow all the people to go, but leave your flocks and herds behind.
摩西講 no，
And Moses said, no.
一隻都冇得留。
Our livestock too must go with
你講
us.
摩西是羅剛強咧
How strong Moses was during that time.
？No，
And all the time he dared to say
你講
no
哇，
to
這個
Pharaoh.
摩西都冇謙卑啊
And you probably say, Moses is not
！No，
humble.
真謙卑，
But he's very humble.
謙卑唔是什麼都冇做，
Being humble is not
Do nothing.
not wanting to do anything.
謙卑是上帝若無講我動靜，我冇俾做大
But
事。
rather being humble is refusing to do anything if God is not with you.
等佢結束嘅時陣，
After he did, in our conclusion,
要這個祈禱。
he had this prayer.
你講 Israel put your hope in the Lord both now and forever。
David said, Israel, put your hope in the Lord both now and forevermore.
英文嗰隻仰望 hope，
In English, we call it hope.
這個意思咩意思呢？
What does this mean?
是代表安靜聽候上帝無盡急嘅表現。
To look up means to wait quietly without an attitude of impatience.
這個生命受上帝對付了嘅人，
A person whose life had already been dealt with by the
你
Lord,
就開始聽候上帝，
they will wait for the Lord,
未急啦。
and they will not be impatient.
急常常錯唔到第字。
When we are impatient, we often do mistakes.
阿伯罕急，
Abraham, because of his
伊哋
impatience,
迦南地呢度發明而急，
because of the famine in the land of Canaan, he became
所
impatient.
以走去egypt，
He went to Egypt
結果犯罪，
and he committed sin there.
講太太是傻嘅。
He lied and said that his wife is his sister
等咗13年，
after 13 years,
講無驚吧，
but he had no son
伊
yet.
個急，
So he became impatient.
坐一個水兒，
So he took a mistress
是一個囝，
and he had a son
叫做以實瑪利。
called Ishmael.
以實瑪利就是現在阿拉伯國家嘅祖宗。
Ishmael right now is the forefather of all the Arab nations.
結果猶太人及阿拉伯人拍正拍鳩之
That's
中。
why there is this never-ending conflict between the Israelites and the Arab people.
掃羅因為急，
King Saul, because of his
家
impatience,
己走去獻祭，
he went and offered sacrifice
結果
by
失
himself.
去伊家嘅王位。
That's why he lost his kingship.
一個謙卑嘅人，
A person who's patient,
是一個聽候
or
上
who's
帝嘅人，
humble rather, is
一
a
個有
person
聽候上帝嘅
who
人。
knows how to wait for the Lord.
聖經講一句話：
The Bible tells us,
凡聽候耶和華嘅人，
those who wait on the Lord
的確會見笑。
will never be put to shame.
叫做幫襯人，
May the Lord help us.
叫做幫襯人。
May the Lord help
我
us.
是謙卑聽候咱嘅上
That
帝。
we can be humble and wait upon the Lord.
上帝若無要點動，
If the Lord refused to move,
咱就無要點動。
then we refuse to move.
叫做幫襯
May
人。
the Lord help us.
我哋聽一啲聖詩
I'd like you to listen to this song,
，Psalms 131。
Psalms 131.